Whatever anyone's view on whether a further inquiry is needed, what I find shocking is that anyone in this House would vote down the Children's Wellbeing Bill this afternoon, which is vital protections for the most vulnerable in our society. And I urge the Leader of the Opposition to withdraw her wrecking amendment.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, the whole House has heard that the Prime Minister lost his brother during the Christmas period. So can I offer him, on behalf of my party, our sincerest condolences. The new year has started with a focus on the decades-long rape gang scandal. Across the country, thousands of girls were tortured and sexually abused at the hands of men who treated them as things to be used and disposed of, destroying many lives forever. The Prime Minister has mentioned previous inquiries. He is right. There has been an inquiry into child sexual abuse, but it wasn't about the rape gang scandal. In its 468 pages, it mentioned Rotherham just once. Is the Prime Minister confident that we know the full extent of rape gang activity?
Prime Minister.
Can I first thank her for her condolences, and can I thank her for reaching out over the Christmas period when I lost my brother? I really did appreciate that, and I appreciate it today. Mr. Speaker, on the question of a further inquiry, there have been a number of inquiries, some of them localised, including the Mayor of Manchester's inquiry recently, and of course a national inquiry Professor Jay carried out, took 7 years, had 20 recommendations, none of which actually were implemented by the party opposite when they were in government. Now, this is a really serious issue. We must focus, obviously, on the victims and survivors. There's no fixed view on the victims and survivors about a further national inquiry. There are mixed views. But there is a view, and I share this view, that what is needed now is action on what we already know. We already know, myself from personal knowledge when I was Chief Prosecutor, that warped ideas, myths and stereotypes about victims were at the heart of this. We've known that for a decade. The Jay report called for mandatory reporting. I called for it 11 years ago. What we need now is action. What can't be tolerated is the idea that this afternoon members opposite will vote down a bill which protects children, include Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, let me just. One of the provisions in the bill is to protect children vulnerable today who are out of school to prevent abusers ever taking those children out of school. I implore members opposite to defy the misleading leadership of the Leader of the Opposition and vote for a really important bill.
Mr. Speaker, I'm shocked that the Prime Minister would say that actions were not taken. He knows full well that we accepted 18. He knows full well that we accepted 18 of the 20 recommendations in the Jay inquiry and went further, launching a gangs task force that found 550 more perpetrators. That shows that there is still work to be done. In Rotherham alone, there have been over 1,400 victims. Across Oldham, Bradford, Bristol, Rochdale, and dozens more towns, there have been thousands more victims, but no one has joined the dots. No one has the total picture, and it is almost certainly still going on.
Correct.
One victim from Telford, and I know he says that victims have different views. We have different views across this House. But one victim from Telford says she wants a national inquiry because it will hold people accountable in a way that previous inquiries have not. Correct. It is very possible to have actions, take on more, and still have a national inquiry. So why won't he listen to victims and launch a national inquiry which would have the power to summon witnesses and make them give evidence under oath?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she says they accepted the recommendations. They didn't act on them. Exactly. One of the central recommendations was mandatory reporting, and it still hasn't been enacted. I called for this 11 years ago. They've been tweeting and talking. We've been acting.
And I would say very respectfully to the Prime Minister, it's not about you. It is about the victims. Be a leader, not a lawyer. We know that people were scared to tell the truth because they thought they would be called racist. If we want to stop this from ever happening again, we cannot be afraid. The Labour Party has adopted the APPG definition of Islamophobia. That same APPG report said talking about sex groomers was an example of Islamophobia. This is exactly why people are scared to tell the truth. And the lack of clarity means that innocent British Muslims are smeared by association. That is not fair, and only a national inquiry can solve this. So will the Prime Minister look again at the Labour Party's adoption of the definition of Islamophobia, its chilling effect, and rule out introducing it in government?
There are some that do think they are. It will take time. All of the institutions will have to give evidence. That will take time. This will delay things till 2031 also. But Mr. Speaker, we already know what the major flaws are. And my argument is we should get on with that action. And that's why we're bringing forward the bill this afternoon.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has effectively told us that he's not able to do two things at the same time. This issue of a delay is a weak excuse, and I would say to him that by refusing this inquiry, he is enabling those people who wish to smear all British Muslims based on the actions of a small minority. He is talking about distraction tactics. Let us have the truth. The Prime Minister cannot tell the House the full scale of the scandal. He doesn't want questions asked of Labour politicians who may be complicit. He won't listen to the victims. He won't listen to the victims who are calling for a national inquiry. He is making this all about a bill this afternoon. Later today, he will tell Labour MPs, including in Telford, Rochdale, Bristol, Derby, Aylesbury, Oldham, Bradford, Peterborough, Coventry, Middlesbrough, Newcastle, Ramsgate, to tell all of these people to vote against a national inquiry into the gangs which have systematically gang raped children in their constituencies. This is one of the worst scandals in British history, Mr. Speaker.
Sorry? This is a very, very important issue that does matter to the country. It matters to all our constituents. I want to make sure they can hear what's being said by the Leader of the Opposition and the Prime Minister of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this is one of the worst scandals in recent British history. But how are they going to explain to their constituents that obeying his whip is more important than doing the right thing?
She's right to say it's one of the worst scandals. It's terrible. That's why I acted on it. Her recently acquired view that it's a scandal, having spent a lot of time on social media over Christmas, not once in 8 years did she stand here and say what she's just said. Not once in 8 years. They didn't act on the recommendations. They want a national inquiry. We had a national inquiry, the J inquiry, the J report. 20 recommendations, not a single one implemented. Not a single one implemented. And she said you can do two things at once. You can't kill the bill this afternoon, wreck that bill, and protect children. Mr. Speaker, there was a dreadful case of Sara Sharif that everybody will remember. This was the girl taken out of school and abused by an abuser. The bill this afternoon fixes that gap. And I know, I'm looking across, I know there are honourable members on the benches opposite who know very well that what's in this bill is necessary, that it's the right thing to do, and that would want to vote for this bill. I urge them to think twice about following this short-sighted, misguided, bandwagon-jumping approach of the non-leadership of the Leader of the Opposition. I urge them to.